This video is for people who are going through the spiritual awakening process, have become aware of that, and are interested in learning about the 5 transitions that people go through during the course of their awakening journey. The reason I'm making this video is because I've been through these transitions. Now, that's not to say I'm some enlightened guru. I bet you've already been through them as well, because we continue to cycle through them time and time again. But what I found about the transitions is oftentimes they look a lot differently than they actually are. A lot of times as we're making great spiritual progress, it can seem like the opposite. It's like giving birth. It's painful, it's challenging, it's loud, it's messy, it's this chaotic experience. And yet this beautiful little spark of the divine emerges and you have a beautiful baby. Kind of like that with the awakening process. It can get a little messy. It could even be kind of painful and confusing at times. But a lot of times this happens as you're transitioning to a new phase of development. And what I found is that when you can be aware of which phase you're in, it can help you experience it in a very different way. Unlike giving birth, which is probably painful, I imagine, no matter what you do. This can be a lot different, because a lot of times what creates the pain for us as we transition and continue upgrading, it's not because of like what's happening. It's for one, our lack of understanding, but most importantly, consequently, the result of that lack of understanding, we end up resisting the process. We end up creating a lot of unnecessary pain, unnecessary suffering for ourselves, making it harder than it has to be. So my goal for this video is to inform you about these 5 different transitions so you can identify which one you're in and then have a very different perspective on it, and consequently a much smoother experience. Number 1, the awareness. A lot of times you'll find that you go through like these spikes of awareness where all of a sudden, just like you wake up one day and you're seeing yourself and your life, the totality of your existence, from a very different perspective. And a lot of times our awareness shifts before we change and before our lives change. So it's kind of like you wake up to the prison you've been living in, essentially. And before you didn't know it was a prison, so you were okay with it. But all of a sudden, now you know. You see the bars, you see the cold floor, you realize you're trapped. And it's kind of an uncomfortable experience when you realize the different prisons of your life. It can be relationship patterns. It can be a job that you sort of put yourself in unconsciously. And now you're waking up to the fact that it's not in alignment. It's sucking the life out of you. It's not fulfilling, but you're kind of stuck there. You can also become aware oftentimes of just the prisons of your mind. You might just start to see how the extent at which you drive yourself bananas with your different thought patterns, with the different emotional condition reactions to various circumstances in your life that don't make any sense, but have just always been there previously, kind of underneath the surface, unbeknownst to you. But all of a sudden, now you're hip to all of this. You're hip to the misalignment with the career, the relationship with yourself. And it's a lot to take in. It's a big, dry pill to swallow, because you'll become aware again before you can realistically change, because change takes time. It takes us time, of course, to shed old patterns, to heal old wounds. Of course, it takes time for most of us to transition out of a career that we sort of embedded ourselves in, maybe for decades. Relationships, that epitomizes what I'm saying here. Relationships can be very complicated, and there's a lot of different moving parts and components and layers to them. But so nonetheless, you find yourself during this transition feeling just out of place in your life, your relationships, yourself, sometimes all at once. And it's very uncomfortable. The good news is there's not much being asked of you at this time. Even though you might feel kind of restless, compelled to find resolve to all of this, it's oftentimes not important initially. What is important, and still not easy, is to accept it. That's the hard part. Like really acknowledging what you're seeing. because it's not easy, because what you're seeing sometimes has pretty significant implications. And I'll give an example. Years ago, I used to run a personal training studio, and that was kind of like the pinnacle of my career. I used to be a trainer, and I worked at a facility, and then I eventually trained clients in my basement. And then for a while, I would go to people's houses and train them there. It was like my little doorway into being an entrepreneur. But eventually, about 10 years in, I had my own gym, my own studio, basically. It was amazing. It was like all that hard work finally led me there. And then I went through this awareness transition where I started to realize that this is not what I thought it would be. I'm not as fulfilled. I'm not as happy. I'm not as abundant. I'm not as free as I thought it would be. I'm starting to see things I used to previously ignore, certain just challenging aspects of running a gym and being a personal trainer. I was starting to see just how my identity was very wrapped up in being like the fitness guy. In fact, I started to notice that when somebody would say something that like about fitness or nutrition that I disagreed with, I would get all weird. I would feel very triggered because it was a threat to my identity. No. I'm the fitness guy. You don't dare have an opinion. And I just became aware of that. But none of these things were really enough to go on. I wasn't really considering leaving behind my career. I didn't even consider it. It wasn't even a possibility. I just started to kind of wake up to these other things in which I was previously just unaware of, essentially. Until one night I was on my phone and I was scrolling and I was like researching other gyms. It was the middle of the night. I had woken up and I just grabbed my phone. Because at that time, not only was I having all this awareness, but my gym was starting to kind of fail and experience problems. Clients were dropping off and the trainers were unhappy. And there was all this stress, all this drama. And I was like trying to get the business to succeed. It was failing at that time. So I was up at night. I couldn't sleep. I was looking around, kind of spying on the competition, you could say. And I found this one woman who owns 3 different studios. And I was looking into her, what she was doing and trying to find out, like, what is this person doing that I'm not doing? And with a little bit of research, I quickly discovered what it was. And what she was doing, unfortunately, was a whole lot of stuff that I knew in that moment I would never do. It was so obvious to me that what it takes to succeed with this thing is just not in alignment. It's not something I want to do. I have no desire to do it. In fact, I knew in that moment I couldn't do it. I say this because it took me all of that, the gradual waking up to the misalignments, the awareness of my own egoic identity and how much I leaned upon that. It took even the gym experiencing many complications and problems and me feeling stressed out and burnt out and depressed and unfulfilled, all that stuff. It took a while for me to finally accept it. But once I finally laid eyes on that website, I realized, oh, this is just not for me. And in one sense, it was a relief because it's like finally like just admitting something, a truth that you've been ignoring. But then, of course, the panic set in because now the question is, well, what are you going to do? This is who you are and have always been. This is what you've always done. You have nothing to fall back on. So now what? So it's that scary panic, like, oh my God, what am I going to do without this relationship, without this career, without this identity? That usually leads people to kind of like prolong this transition when the only thing is being asked of you is to just admit to yourself that you're seeing something and not to deny it, suppress it, rationalize it, pretend it's not there. Because this is what really delays the inevitable. The inevitable is you are going to move on from the circumstance because you've changed and now you're aware that you've changed. You're aware that you don't belong and no longer is the universe energetically supporting you in this identity, circumstance, relationship, etc. And it's just a matter of time before you finally start to reflect and manifest like more reflections of who you really are. So the sooner you can kind of come to terms with that and swallow that pill, the better. Number 2 is the shedding. This is when the universe basically stops waiting for you to decide and come to terms and make up your mind. It just starts removing things that don't belong in your life. And it's tough because a lot of the things that are being removed, cleared away, you might not be ready to let go of yet. You might not even understand why they like allegedly have to go. You still might think you want them and think you need them. And it's because the mind is trying to control something way, way, way beyond its control. And the mind thinks, well, if I don't see an alternative, then this is the only thing. So I'm going to cling to it because it feels scary and irresponsible to let it go. But the reality is the mind doesn't see everything. Your higher self can kind of see up ahead. God, the universe, it's a lot more omnipresent than your little ego mind. So it's that's why things are beginning to happen, because even though you think something, I need this thing, I can't let go, this is not smart, it's not actually true. It's like you're judging this grand circumstance from like a little tiny little peephole. So, but nonetheless, it's very challenging when this happens. But luckily, when the clearing starts to happen, at least things are moving. At least you're like on the road to going to higher, better, more resonant places in your life. Also with yourself. This is kind of a gateway to a lot more fulfillment, a life that's feels a lot more liberating and free and expansive, a higher like states of joy, passion, purpose. You just feel it's like where you can thrive. It's kind of like when I used to grow medical marijuana, another thing I used to be into. If something about the environment is off, it doesn't matter how awesome and expensive your lights are, or like the badass nutrients you're using and all the cool supplements and your wicked like high-tech hydroponic system. If there's one variable off, maybe it's the humidity, the moisture of or the soil moisture, whatever. There's a lot of different variables. If one variable is off, the plant, in spite of all the other things it has going for them, it looks sad. You can see it. You can literally see a lack of vigor and vitality. Growth will slow and stunt, and eventually like it can die. Not trying to like warn you you're going to die or anything, but the point is, like, what is being cleared away are the things that are kind of tying you to this environment that's not conducive to you thriving. And even though you don't know where this is going to be, or how it's going to look, and how you're going to even think about yourself in your life, it's out there. It's like in the field. It's in the cards. It's like literally in the now. And the only thing in the way is all this stuff the universe is taking upon itself to clear away from your life. And usually when this is happening, it's kind of like obvious. It seems like sometimes over the top, kind of chaotic. I'll give an example. As I mentioned, once I came to terms with wanting to not have my personal training gym, shortly after that, I started to kind of dream and envision myself as a YouTuber, even though I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I had, no YouTube experience at all. But I realized, this feels, in spite of me not knowing how I would do it or if I could do it, it feels, for some reason, very deeply resonant with me. And as this sort of continued, I started thinking about like how, well, if I'm a YouTuber, I can move. And I thought about moving to a warmer climate and moving to San Diego in particular. And anyways, the only thing holding this whole thing back was my daughter. My daughter was in a really good school. This nice little like private Waldorf school, and she was happy and she was thriving. And it was that school that made my wife and I say, you know what, in spite of like where it feels like life is trying to take us, in spite of where we would love to go, we love our daughter so much that we're not going to just take her out of the school. Lo and behold, shortly after that, the school shut down. It literally just went out of business, out of the blue. It was there for like 20, 30 years. We got an email saying, you're done, it's over. We were like, oh my God, that's pretty trippy. I believe that same day, maybe within that time frame, it's kind of hard to know the facts exactly, but around that time, we were coming home one day into our like neighborhood, and as we pulled onto our street, we saw like straight up like almost like a SWAT team, like armed gunmen in like military outfits, like going through, searching around the neighborhood. Apparently there was a bank robbery or something. But nonetheless, it was like, what the hell is going on here? The schools are shutting down. It's like all hell's breaking loose. We got home, and our roof was flooded. There was some kind of pipe burst. It was like boom, boom, boom. The dominoes started to fall. Now, by that time, I had been through this type of transition before, luckily, and I kind of like knew that what it represented. It just means it's time to go. It means there's something else, and it's time to go, which is wonderful because it means it's not as far off as you think. You going from this collapsing environment or circumstance or even ego identity to something much, much better. So luckily for us, it was like a permission slip. It was like, okay, now we know there's nothing holding us down. Now we can start thinking in a different way. Now we can start like taking seriously our dreams because it appears there's no other options. But the first time I went through this type of experience, it was terrifying. I thought, why is my life collapsing? What the heck is going on? What the heck have I done wrong? I've been meditating. I've been doing my inner work. I felt like I was making progress. And all of a sudden, it seems like the gods have turned on me and they're punishing me, it seems. It's not a punishment. It's not random chaos and destruction. It's a necessary clearing because you have made progress and you are ready for this next step. The third transition is the void. This is everybody's favorite. This is where nothing's happening. Nothing's breaking down. No new information is coming in. A lot of things have already been kind of taken away. You had a lot of, prior to the void, it may have felt like destiny was a real thing and it had sort of taken charge of your life and things were moving. You were having all these different insights and awarenesses. You're starting to form these like dreams of a better life, a different, better, more expansive version of yourself. Things are breaking down, things are clearing. But after the clearing, you're just kind of sitting there like in like the aftermath with no new information, no insight, no confidence, no hope, nothing. You just feel stagnant, like you're just existing in a very sort of depressing way. And this is where people can really the mind can really start to get itself worked up into a frenzy because it's looking at the life and it's saying like, well, you know what? Maybe what I had before wasn't like ideal. The relationships. Now I'm alone. Maybe the career wasn't perfect, but my God, I was paying the bills. Maybe my living situation wasn't like amazing, but I still had a roof over my head. And here I am, like worse off. Everything's worse, basically. And there's nothing new, no even signs, no even intuitive signs that, oh, it's on the way, it's coming, it's close. You just feel like you've just been like abandoned. You were like, at one point, it felt like there were like, life was taking you through this crazy, sacred rite of passage or metamorphosis. And there was a sense of being connected with the divine. And even though things were breaking down, things were happening. And now it's just, and you say, okay, maybe I'm just having a bad week. Next week, things will turn around. And when next week comes and nothing. Week after that, nothing. And now your mind starts thinking, I got to make something happen because if this continues, it's not going to be good. This is an important time. And it can last a lot longer than a lot of us would expect. A lot of us would prefer. But it just seems to be what happens, honestly. I have my theories as to why it happens, but who am I? It just seems to be what happens. It's just part of it. And what I have learned and what I can say with confidence is that it doesn't last forever. It most often than not gives way to a period of like really exciting expansion in life where all of a sudden you go from like nothing happening to a lot of things happening all at one time. And like a magnet, you start drawing to yourself the resources, the people, the lessons, the healings, the right opportunities. And all of a sudden you're moving quick. But you're not just moving anywhere. You're not just moving backwards. You're moving forward. You're moving up and outward and expanding, and things are happening and you're feeling great. Your faith returns. That sense of the wind being in your sails is back and you are moving and cruising and loving it. It's It happens, and it can happen very quickly. It can happen kind of out of the blue. Sometimes it's one thing, one email, one message that just creates this sort of ripple effect. And the same rate at which things may have broken down, the same rate at which you become aware of all your shortcomings and all the misalignments, that same pace oftentimes can be experienced in an exact opposite way that is extremely positive and exhilarating and rewarding. And when this is happening, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I ever questioned. But nonetheless, if you're watching this and you're in the void, you're probably thinking, well, when's that going to happen, Vic? No one can tell you that, obviously, but it will happen. It will happen. And in the meantime, it's a great opportunity to deepen your trust, your faith. You know, during the voids, even though on one sense you feel like spiritually cut off, at least I do and many other seekers do, it's actually a well-known and well-documented like sign you're going through, like what people call the dark night of the soul. You know, St. John of the Cross is a Spanish mystic from the 1500s, and he was one of the first people to write about it. And he would talk about it like it was, he called it spiritual aridity. You just feel cut off. But during the voids, for me, I found that because of that, I become like more of a dedicated seeker, where I will meditate longer, I will pray harder, I will read more books. And that does seem to kind of help when I'm able to get outside of myself and not think so much about me and my life and my circumstance. An old Buddhist master once said, "Know you, no problem. It's a time to just be present and patient and observe and to release attachments. It's a time to, like, in this void where many people freak out, myself included a good amount of the time, honestly. But when I'm not freaking out, it's a great opportunity to really, really like start to release attachments. And in that, like, it's possible to become fairly content and free, even though you're cut off from spirit, even though nothing's happening, even though your circumstance may look 10 times worse than it was like a year ago. You can like become okay with that. And that's awesome, because life is going to be up and down, and probably until the day we die. And most people, they like a roller coaster, when things are up, they're great, and it's easy to get kind of inflated and then feel like it's never going to change. And then when the tides shift, then people freak out, and it's kind of the nature of the mind. And you have this kind of unique spiritual, I don't know, situation where you get to kind of like work at breaking free from that, which is awesome, because that's going to help you. That's going to help you just go through life, because there are many similar examples of these spiritual transitions that play out in your life, your career, and your relationships. Like, naturally, it's a part of nature. Change, evolution, decay, collapse, rebirth. It's part of it. And so is the waiting. So is the nothing happening. So is the void. But if you can become good at remaining faithful, patient, present during these voids, imagine how much that can take the edge off of like just the everyday challenges of the ordinary human life. Transition number 4 is where a lot of people tend to get stuck, myself included. And it's understandable, because it requires a completely different way of relating with your awakening process. And it's almost like not just a transition, it's like you're stepping into a completely new role, essentially. And what this transition is, I call it the purpose transition. This is when life kind of puts you in this situation where it's time. Like, the way to complete the transition is to step into your life purpose. And if you're going through this, here are some of the indicators that you're here. 1, you have a sense that you do have a purpose, even if you don't know what it is. And I'm not talking about like, well, everyone has a purpose, of course. It's like, there's like this deep, undeniable, strong knowing in your body, in like the depth of your soul, that you came to do something, to create something, to offer something, to exemplify something. And not only that, but there's this feeling like you're not going to be really happy and truly fulfilled until you do this thing. Now, here's the one of the challenging things is even when you kind of have a decent idea of what that is, it's still like difficult to do for a variety of reasons. One of them is practical. For example, when I realized I wanted to be a YouTuber and help people with, in a very deep way, like I do now with like the awakening process, it's a very deep, transformative experience, obviously. At the time, I was so embedded in my life circumstance. I was a fitness trainer, as I mentioned, and I had a career, I had a whole life situation built up around me. So this sort of like feeling of my purpose, it just seemed like, well, how am I going to realistically do that? It just didn't seem feasible. It seemed like a kind of a pipe dream. And then even with what happened next, which for me was life kind of cleared my path, as I talked about before, and sort of like I like let go of the boats and burnt my bridges, and even still, when there were no other options but to pursue this sense of purpose, it was still terrifying. It still required a complete identity shift because I didn't see myself as credible. I didn't see myself as someone who can really say, hey, I'm Victor and I can help people with their awakening process. It just seemed like I wasn't there yet. And not only like realistically I wasn't there yet, but it brought up a lot of also old fears, old doubts, old insecurities from my childhood and adolescence. And the combination of not having a clear picture of what my purpose would look like, having no idea of what to start, where to start, just being plagued with all these old doubts and things that were seemingly like activated now in my system. I became stuck. I became stuck in this place. And what I did, what you might be doing, is I was waiting. I was waiting for a number of things. I was waiting for clarity. I was like willing to do something, like higher self, God, universe, just show me what to do. Tell me what to do. I'm all in. I can't wait. I'm down, but I just don't know what to do. So I was waiting for clarity. Another thing I was waiting for is to feel confident. I felt like such an imposter. I felt so small. I felt so incapable and ill-equipped to do this thing that it felt like I was being asked by the universe to do. So I was waiting to feel better. So I poured my energy into doing a lot of shadow work and a lot of healing. And I did. I successfully went into my ancestral trauma. I went into my past lives. I was excavating my whole psyche on many levels. And I was seeing some progress, making some breakthroughs, having some insights, and feeling myself transform. But even with all that work, years of waiting, when it came down to me even contemplating, taking one little step on my purpose, the shadow always produced more resistance, more blockages. And what I found is a couple things. Here's how I finally made the shift. And here's the main thing I want to share with you is it didn't just happen. It wasn't like, okay, the transition's over and now there's this clear path forward. I come to find, after many years of waiting and delaying, what I realized is I could have ended this transition anytime I wished. The universe is like waiting to meet us halfway. And even though there may have been a decent portion of your awakening journey that felt like destiny kind of taking you by the hand and leading you through the changes, through the healing, through the growth, through the voids even. And so you were kind of like waiting for this hand of fate to kind of show us the way, take us to the next step. And it kind of stops. It stops sort of guiding us. You might feel that way. You might feel kind of cut off from your guidance. You might feel like, why am I not getting any answers? I'm sincerely wanting them and it's falling on deaf ears apparently. It's because we're meant to take the reins essentially. There comes a point where you got to take off the training wheels. And while it makes sense to have them at some point so you don't fall on your face, there comes a point where it is kind of slowing you down. It's just it's unnecessary. All your friends are racing around and you're like on with the little training wheels, you're always lagging behind. It's like, no, take off the training wheels. And that's like essentially what I did. I waited so long and my life became so precarious and the breakdown was just so ridiculous that I finally just woke up one day and asked myself, what do I want my life to look like? And then I just started looking at my life as it presently was. And day by day, I started doing what I could. For example, I knew I wanted to be a YouTuber, but I didn't know what type of YouTuber. So I started doing research. I started filming videos on all sorts of different things. I started filming videos on, it doesn't matter what, but I had like 5 different YouTube channels at one point. I had no clarity. I was insisting on creating clarity for myself through just intense action and experimentation. I asked myself, like, where do I want to live? Well, I wanted to live in San Diego, and I was living in Michigan, as I mentioned. So what do I have to do? Whether I have guidance or not, what has to get done? Well, I got to sell the house. For that to happen, I had to get the house ready. For that to happen, so I started like literally just chipping my way towards my dreams. And here's what happened. Here's kind of the cool thing. Once I started just kind of doing the best with what I had, and I stopped insisting and having a clear roadmap and tons of confidence, and just started kind of like sloppily stumbling myself forward as best I could, things started to snowball. The guidance finally, after a long time, it finally returned. And it felt like I was finally a co-creator once again, where I was taking charge. I was owning my power that I didn't realize I had until I started to exercise it as best I could. And within a few short months, I was living my dream. My YouTube channel blew up. I was doing a lot of online coaching, and I was living in San Diego. All these things that seemed so impossible, so far-fetched, literally started happening. But it wasn't anything that just happened to me. It was something I initiated. And if you've been stuck in this purpose transition for so long, then what could you do after this video to move you even 1 inch closer to your dreams? Try it. I dare you to try it, because you'll start to feel a shift almost immediately. I did. In fact, what I just described, it happened to me kind of on one day, in like one conversation in my head. Like what I expressed to you is something I literally did in my head. In fact, I remember exactly, I was in my kitchen and I was thinking like, okay, well, if you want to move, what do you got to do? And I started thinking, well, you gotta sell the house, you gotta get the house ready. And then I had the thought like, okay, well, what do you have to do to get the house ready? And I was in my kitchen and I was looking around, and I happened to be standing in front of this drawer, one of the drawers in my kitchen, which my wife and I called the miscellaneous drawer. It's a drawer with a bunch of random, miscellaneous items, essentially. Things you can't really throw out, but you don't know where to put them throughout the house. It was cluttered up. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start with that freaking drawer. So I opened the drawer. It took like 2 hours to organize and throw away and, deal with the freaking miscellaneous drawer. But once I got digging around in that drawer, you know what happened? I literally felt myself snap back into alignment. It was almost like I've been holding myself back, waiting unnecessarily, but all the while, there were indeed actions I could take. As mundane and sort of simple as it might have sounded, that one simple action step in the miscellaneous drawer, I felt myself finally be back like in the flow, back in alignment with where I'm meant to be. And things literally just snowballed and accelerated from that one decision. And I kick myself sometimes because I now realize, I look back, I could have made that decision years and years and years ago, but I didn't know. So now you know. And the 5th and final phase is integration. And I bet you've experienced this to some degree before, where you make a shift, you even make a change, you learn something new, you accomplish something, but still on the inside, you don't feel accomplished. I'll give an example. I've been training kickboxing and boxing and Muay Thai pretty intensely for like the last year. I go like almost 6 days a week sometimes. And when I started like a year ago, I was so bad. I still am pretty bad. I've improved it. I was really bad when I first started, and everything was new. Everything was challenging. I was by far the worst person in the class. I was like the least skilled. But as I just continued going and getting better and getting better and getting better, there came a day where the teacher, because I have made a lot of improvements, even though there's a long way to go. I have gotten a lot better. And there came a day anyways where the instructor, he used me as an example to like demonstrate the technique we are using that day. Like normally the way the class goes real quick is we gather around in a circle. He'll kind of just quickly grab who he perceives to be one of the best fighters in the bunch, and he'll call him up, and then he'll like use that person to demonstrate this like combination or something. And he started like over and over picking me. And I could do it. I knew what he was asking. I knew how to like roll with the instruction. But every time he called me up, I felt like I don't belong here. Like I wasn't saying this in my head, but like emotionally, I felt like really uncomfortable, very uncomfortable with like the success. And it just felt, it's the integration. And a lot of times people, they like never shake this old identity. Like if you, for example, failed at something at some point in your life, you may have been walking around with this like definition of yourself as a failure. And what I found that can be very helpful during this transition is at the very least spending an equal amount of time celebrating your victories, your triumphs, your successes, the things that you did well. Of course, most people don't do that. Most people, they ruminate over all the mistakes they made, all the things they haven't yet done. And I've met people. I used to be this type of person where I would be doing a really good job in many ways, but it was always like the 2 or 3 things I wasn't doing well that occupied my headspace. Brendon Burchard, he's a well-known motivational speaker, and he said something years ago that stuck with me. And it's what I'll tell you right now is to celebrate your wins. When's the last time you really gave yourself an actual pat on the back for something you've done well, and taking a moment to really like integrate that and say, you know what, Victor, you did that. You sucked badly at kickboxing, and yet you still went 4 or 5 days a week, and now you're sparring with the pros, still getting your butt kicked, but you're hanging in there, and you've improved a lot. That took a lot of courage, took a lot of discipline, took a lot of, like, you belong there. I belong there. And sometimes just having this little like sort of like out loud conversation with yourself in your car or something, you'd be surprised at what it can do. It's like our psyche sometimes is just waiting for us to own what we've done. And I know even right now, you're probably hearing this and you might even feel like uncomfortable with what I'm saying, because you probably haven't celebrated your wins in a long time. But I challenge you to look back at your life in the last 1 year, we'll say, and look at where you are now. Look at who you become. How much have you healed? How much of your shadow have you confronted? How many leaps of faith have you taken? How much have you grown? You're probably like a different person right now than you were just a year ago. And when's the last time you gave yourself a little party for such a feat? Most people don't grow. Most people literally don't attempt to improve themselves at all. They coast. They let fear hold them back. They rationalize not going for it, never living on the threshold of their comfort zone, staying where it's safe and comfortable and familiar. This is 99% of the population. But if you're watching videos from me and other people like me, that is not you. That has not been you in a very long time.